Welcome to the May business meeting of the Borough of Gettysburg. If you all please rise for a moment of silence and the pledge, please. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening. When we get to the portion of public comment this evening, seeing we have a rather full house, I just ask everyone to please remember to sign in, okay? That helps our secretary keep track of the public comment and attribute it to the right person, spell your names correctly, and so forth. No other announcements or remarks. We have our agenda. We have a motion to approve the May 8th, 2023 agenda as presented.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion, a second. Any questions or comments about the agenda? Okay, if not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, next we have our minutes. These are for the council meeting of April 10 and the work session on April 24. Before we have a motion, are there any known corrections to those minutes? All right, seeing none, may we have the motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the council meeting for April 10, 2023, and the council work session of April 24th, 2023 as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments about the minutes? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that takes us to our special presentation, the 100 Nights of Taps. Ms. Allen, I saw you here. Where have you gone?
Oh.
There you are.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And good evening to Borough Council members. It's great to see you all again. It's been a while. Charles, thank you very much for accepting my wanting to come and speak tonight. So thank you very much. Chief Lenny, always good to see you. Chad, always good. First of all, I'm here representing the Lincoln Fellowship of Pennsylvania as its current president. I'm also accompanied by Ken Keim, vice president. You probably all know Ken. He's an institution here in Gettysburg, and he's a real joy to work with and a real honor for him to be here with me tonight, and it's an honor to address this esteemed group. Just as a recap on who the Lincoln Fellowship is, I think people say, the Lincoln Fellowship. Well, it's been around since 1938. We honor the memory and legacy of President Abraham Lincoln's role here in Gettysburg through several initiatives. Our annual commemoration of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address every November 19th, and our 100 Nights of Taps program. We also have, we actively support the Gettysburg National Military Parks Educational Traveling Trunk Program. And we commissioned and we maintain the return visit statue on the square, on Lincoln Square. And that's my first part of what I'd like to address tonight. On April 20th, I received an email, urgent, one that came from the police to Public Works to the Lincoln Fellowship. We had a wobbling Lincoln on the square, the statue. 800-pound Lincoln statue wobbling on the square. That's a problem. On the 26th of April, the Seward Johnson, the sculptor, he's now deceased, but his group at the atelier came down to take a look at the problem, said it wasn't too bad, but they would try to fix, and they made a valiant effort. And they even had to listen to me on my knees, it wasn't working. But we had Public Works, and we had Rob Harbaugh with us, and he's a genius. So that's why I'm here. I live in a borough that has tremendously wonderful people to work with, and I can't stress how deeply grateful the Lincoln Fellowship is to the Public Works Department, especially Rob. You were amazing, especially hearing me bib, bib, bib. And it was great. You just knew what to do. You had the solution. You were very kind to the people from Seward Johnson's group. Ken, did you have anything to add with this? And it was just spectacular, I think. I have baked some cookies for your group, and we'd also like to present you with our commemorative coin from 100 Nights of Taps as a special thank you for all your great work with getting that statue secured. And it's an unusual statue in that it demands public attention and touching, so it can't be wobbling. But it's nice and secure now, and thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Now, 100 Nights of Taps. We were going into our 7th year of 100 Nights of Taps. We co-sponsor this now with the Gettysburg National Military Park. They're great partners with us. We also have partners with Taps for Veterans and the licensed battlefield guides. So we have combined all of our efforts. So if you come at 5 o'clock, you will get a nice tour with a licensed battlefield guide of the cemetery, and then you will be left at Soldiers National Monument to hear the sounding of taps. We have bugler every single night. We opened up sign up for the bugler on March the 15th. We had 100 buglers signed up in 2 hours to come here. So we begin on Memorial Day. We have a fantastic Memorial Day opening. That night we can actually do a ceremony. Oh, Jill, I'm sorry. I wanted to mention, back up to the statue. Thank you, Main Street, for the new insert at the wayside. So now that we've refurbished, Ken took care of the refurbishing of the statue $22,000 later. It's not wobbling anymore, and we have a beautiful wayside. So thank you, Jill. That was spectacular too. Great community, great. Now back to taps, sorry. We open up on Memorial Day. We've got some great speakers. We've got Michelle Crowell from the Library of Congress will be joining us. Because 100 Nights of Taps, we are shifting into an educational program. We do an educational segment called Enduring Pathways every single night during the summer. So Michelle is going to talk to the educational value of coming to the Gettysburg National Cemetery to learn more about it. She's fantastic. She is the Civil War and Reconstruction Specialist in the Manuscript Division. Just an incredible person. And then we will also be hearing from Lieutenant General Christopher Burney, who's a huge supporter of the 100 Nights of Taps program. He was in the Pentagon on 9/11, and his stories are unbelievable. And so he will be speaking as well. So I think it'll be a very special Memorial Day ceremony. We also have some other highlights throughout the summer I want to just mention. So opening ceremony, we will have multiple buglers, so we'll be doing cascading taps. And if you haven't heard our cascading taps, it'll send chills down your spine. It's so beautiful. We scatter the buglers. They recreate what it would be like in a camp situation on the battlefield, and they just randomly play taps to close out the ceremony. It's beautiful. On June the 6th, we will be doing a special program for D-Day. We will be entertaining the ranger from the Eisenhower Historic Site, and our special bugler will be Steve Snyder, who comes dressed in World War II uniform. It's really nice. Then on June 7th, something very special. I was inspired to start the 100 Nights of Taps after visiting Ypres, Belgium, where I saw the Last Post played at the Menin Gate, and they sound the Last Post every single night at 8 o'clock without fail. Even when the Nazis occupied Ypres, they moved the ceremony to London, sounded the Last Post, and then moved it back, and you could still hear World War II battles going on when they returned back to the Ypres Menin Gate. I thought we should have to do that in Gettysburg. So here we are in our 7th year. It's really great. So we have 2 buglers coming from Ypres, Belgium, to be in our program on that date, and that's June the 7th. So we will be sounding not only our taps, but we will be sounding the Last Post. And we will also be learning about an American soldier who was killed in Ypres, buried in Bruges, and then reinterred at the Gettysburg National Military Park Cemetery. We'll also have, on June the 10th, we will be have an educational program celebrating the great careers of 2 living historians who will be visiting us, Harold Heyser and Craig Simons, 2 great Lincoln scholars, and we will be including them in our program. And then on July 1, 2, and 3, we'll have licensed battlefield guides doing our enduring pathways, learn more about the battles. And then on July 4th, we will have a bugler coming from the Philadelphia Orchestra. He will be performing with Dr. Alan Gelzo, who has, his speech is going to be 272 words. I just got it today, and he just brings a lump to my throat. It's brilliant. So I hope you can come to that July 4th. Every night is different. I hope you can make it to more than one of our 100 Nights of Taps ceremonies and programs. I wanted to keep it brief, and I will. So thank you very much. And again, Rob, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you. All right, that'll take us to public comment. Please note that the first public comment session is restricted to items that are on the agenda. We have copies of that there at the podium. When you give public comment, please use the podium so that the people at home can hear you with the microphone. Please give your name and address and restrict yourselves to 5 minutes. Public comment. Darlene, please.
My name is Darlene Brown. I live at 355 West High Street. As some of you know, I was the initiator of the Elm Street project many years ago. I took the opportunity to take the money from the Department of Community and Economic Development and hire Dirk and Etzen, a landscape architect, civil engineer, and land planner group. We worked diligently with the community of the 3rd Ward. The Elm Street program is a result of support and assistance from the following groups: the Pennsylvania Interfaith Community Programs, the Borough of Gettysburg, the 3rd Ward concerned citizens and neighbors who follow this through all the way through, Gettysburg College, and the Gettysburg Hospital. The steering committee meetings had the neighborhood residents with no color barriers and was very integrated with everyone. I myself have given my life probably the last 30 years to the 3rd Ward. I did affordable housing, facade improvements. I worked with the Department of Economics and Development to get a loan for the Arts Council to take that terrible, terrible building down there and turn it in. We are currently working to get another $300,000 to do the Arts Council building over again. I live in the 3rd Ward. I've taken houses that were vegetation growing inside and redid them and lived in there for 10 years. This project that you're looking for is everything the Elm Street program is, or should be, is that people live and work in their homes. So I ask that you please approve this for the community in Elm Street. Thank you.
Public comment. Please.
I'm Lois Edwards, and I live at 303 South Washington, and I am also coming to speak for the event venue motion that's up. When I first heard about it, I thought, I am from Oneida, Illinois, 830 people, and I've lived in New Jersey, 80 bazillion people, and I made my way back to Gettysburg, and I'm thrilled to be here. I've lived here 30 years, and I think this project with the event venue is what Gettysburg is about. We're a meeting place of all the roads. We have history. We have tourism. As a citizen, those are the things I think we want to encourage. Having been in a small town that lost their only grocery store and lost whatever, this is a small town too, a lot bigger than I grew up in. But I would really encourage that this be approved, and I think it supports what we are as Gettysburg and what our strengths are in this community. And again, history, and I live in a Civil War house and have had fun working with the Historic Society here, and I just want to say thank you for being here and making it so interesting to live here. And thanks for the police, you're always wonderful. And Mr. Roba also has helped me with some, and I got trees today. Thank you.
Okay. Public comment.
I guess I'll go. My name is Brian Allen. I live at 211 South Washington Street. I forgot my reading glasses, so you're going to have to bear with me. I'm new to readers, so I'm not used to carrying them around all the time. So. Here you go. Are they good?
Yep.
Thank you. Oh, so much better. Thank you so much. All right. I'm here to offer my support in favor of the current drafted text of the zoning amendment as written, as it pertains to Scott English's proposed use of the Gettysburg Academy on High Street as a B&B and event venue. My understanding of the local ordinance and zoning permits, zoning permits such use of the property as an event venue with certain restrictions and regulations. For example, events must limit the number of people in attendance based on square footage and fire codes and the like, abide by noise ordinances, and end by a certain hour, to name a few. Scott's proposed event venue certainly falls in line with existing laws, ordinances, and policies. And keep in mind that this is an upscale event venue. You know, we're talking about doing graduation parties, wedding rehearsals, and fundraising events, things like that. You know, we're not talking about doing frat parties and after-hours gatherings and such. The proposed use of the property presents a multitude of benefits to the Third Ward and Gettysburg at large. Let me back up first and talk about this in the context of creating a thriving and vital Third Ward. I'm taking courses in urban planning and urban ecology. It's a very liberal arts thing. Many years ago, I sat where you sat on Borough Council, representing the 2nd and the 3rd Ward. I also served, to see Darlene over there, served on the Adams County Housing Authority and interfaith housing as well. So I say that only to mention that I know a thing or two about this. I'm not just speaking off the cuff. One of the many things I learned from these experiences is that a primary indicator for planning and sustaining a thriving community is diversity, not just demographic diversity, which of course has its value, but talking about diversity of use, particularly in terms of zoning, so that communities consist of mixed-use residencies, businesses, and organizations. What that looks like is single-family houses next to mixed-income complexes, next to locally owned businesses, next to churches, schools, nonprofits, government organizations, and restaurants. The mixed usage creates culturally diverse, socially responsible, and economically thriving communities with a strong foundation from which to grow. Such is the case with the Third Ward, specifically with the Elm Street overlay. Recent renovations to the infrastructure and streetscape of Steiner Avenue and South Street have beautified the Third Ward, creating and inviting an atmosphere for tourists, attracting new businesses, and enhancing the community for residents. It seems a natural progression to continue such beautification and enhancement down the South Washington Street corridor. Scott's historic property on West High Street has been a Third Ward staple since the early 1830s, I believe, Scott. It has been in his family for 3 generations, during which they have steadfastly maintained the property, and repurposing it as a B&B with an event venue will not only continue that legacy and preserve the property's historic integrity, but it will also serve to perpetuate the benefits of a diverse mixed-use community. Secondly, as we all know, Gettysburg depends on tourism as a major source of revenue. Having worked in the service and hospitality industry in this community for more than a decade, I know firsthand how creating a memorable Gettysburg experience promotes recidivism. I cannot tell you how many visitors have come and returned to Gettysburg based on a friend, coworker, or neighbor's recommendation after visiting here for an event or an overnight or weekend stay. Creating an event venue in addition to the B&B will promote overnight tourism and increase the likelihood that people will return, and encourage others to do so, ensuring that Gettysburg is not a one-time only destination, but a multi-visit attraction. Thirdly, a B&B with an event venue will increase local business. As is the case with this industry, guests will venture into the community to utilize the local economy, restaurants, shops, entertainment, not to mention the venue itself will employ local businesses for its operations, catering, entertainment, flowers, name it. Lastly, approving Scott's proposed use of the property will keep the business in operation on the tax rolls. Alternatively, it could be converted to a nonprofit 501c3. As you know, businesses are being gobbled up by the Friends of the Parks Foundation, historic societies, and as you know, with 50% of your properties off the tax rolls, we want to preserve business as much as possible such that the tax burden doesn't fall to residents. That will keep the borough's income to the tune of $6,000 per year, which is no small drop in the bucket. That's all I have. So thank you for your time. I appreciate you. I thank you for doing your due diligence and hearing both sides, but I hope that you find in favor of this project as it's a benefit not only to the Third Ward, but to Gettysburg as a whole. Have a great night. Appreciate your time. Oh, these are yours. Thank you.
All right, public comment.
My name's Eric Dorr. I live at the 219 Baltimore Street. I own the Gettysburg Museum of History, and I also want to come out in favor of Scott's proposal, ZTA, as written. I just also purchased another property next door at 223 Baltimore Street and 224 Court Alley, so I'm invested in that neighborhood. My 219 property also is 3 generations. My great-grandparents lived there, my grandparents lived there, my mother grew up there, and now myself and my partner Cheryl live there. So not only is it a business for me, we live there, and I've lived there for 15 years. So I'd really like to see that property be used. I talked to Mrs. Butterfield at length about this, and thank you for talking to me about it. And I just hope it can go through. I think it's a great use of the property. It's a beautiful property, a historic property, and you know, we hope to be able to use it ourselves. So thank you very much.
Public comment.
Good evening. My name is Adam Buck, 2080 Mumsburg Road, and I've been following the discussion on the zoning discussion for a while here, and I've come to express my support for the current ZTA as written. So, thank you.
Public comment. Yep.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Reichling. I'm also at 219 Baltimore Street, 224 Court Alley, and 223 Baltimore Street. I've been here for 10 years. I love the community, love the neighborhood, love the Englishes. They have a beautiful property. We knew Scott's mother for years, and we were happy that he took over the property when she had to move out. And just seeing what he's doing with the property is very exciting to us. I think it'll be a benefit to the community, a benefit to the businesses, and there's not much more that I can add than Brian said it so eloquently, but I think it'll be a real benefit to the community, and I hope that you'll consider passing his request.
You're easier on the eyes. You can stand real.
You're not that bad.
No, well, thank you.
Public comments.
Oh, Gail Surface, 429 Baltimore Street. I'm here for the Englishes. I feel that you should let it happen. It's going to help, and it's also going to help preserve a very historic building that actually was the start of a school and was the start of the seminary. If you lose it because you just don't make, you know, the right decision to let it happen that way, you're losing a part of history of Gettysburg. I mean, I live on the main drag. I put up with Bike Week because it helps the community. I put up with the noise and people making things sound really loud in front of my house. I have to leave my dog and take her somewhere else so that she doesn't have a problem. I got kids walking in my alleyway that I have to stop. And then sometimes I have to bother him when I have kids walking in my alleyway and his officers, even though I have signs that say private property, don't come. I have people that look in my windows with, you know, different things. I even have ghost tourists that stand across the street and tell everybody that Lincoln urinated on the witness tree across the street. That's why it grew so big in Gettysburg. Although that is a funny story, but I can't picture the 16th president doing that no matter what. So I think you should just let them do it, as long as they're within the guidelines of everything that so far has been approved, that everybody said, according to all the stuff that I've watched and read. I don't see the big problem. It's just going to help more and more in the town. If I can put up with all the stuff that goes on the main drag, I don't see why we couldn't put up with, you know, 1 or 2 things happening once or twice a month to keep the building the way it's supposed to be in the town of Gettysburg as part of the history. Other than that, I have a pork roast in the oven, so I'm gotta go. Come over anytime you want.
Public comment.
Good evening, Jill Sellers, President of Main Street, Gettysburg. This evening, I just want to share a quick excerpt from this year's U.S. Chamber of Commerce State of the American Economy report. So in February of this year, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce President and CEO Suzanne Clark outlined how government can fulfill its role to support business, improve citizen lives, and strengthen the country's future. At that same time, she warned against polarization and gridlock. She cautioned that government overreach at every level harms innovation and limits our economic growth. I've stated previously, Main Street is in full support of the proposed use of the English property. It falls under the objectives of the downtown core and the mission of the Elm Street program. I encourage you to pass this evening. Thank you.
Public comment.
Mandy Day, 142 West High Street, and you probably know I'm for the other side. It is with joy that we can celebrate the passing this last week by the Pennsylvania House of Representatives of the LGBTQ non-discrimination protections. About 2 years ago, you, the council, also addressed and passed a non-discrimination ordinance. And yet at the last meeting, 4 of you indicated that you were in favor of discriminating against one section of the community while protecting another. You challenged me to submit my complaint to the Non-Discrimination and Human Relations Commission. I did, and you should have all received their response. Because of the uniqueness of the situation, it was not a landlord-tenant conversation. The commission told me they would not send me a copy of the email. But just because something is omitted doesn't mean there isn't a broader meaning or that things should not be included. The Black Lives Matter sign that's in my yard does not mean that only Black Lives Matter. Fight my breast cancer shirt does not mean that that's the only cancer that matters. We have moved past the time of white and colored signs for bathrooms and water fountains, past the time when no Irish or long-haired freaky people need apply. Socioeconomic differences should not be used against us. If it is wrong for your neighborhood, why is it right for ours? We should be looking forward enough in our thinking that a non-discrimination ordinance simply means not discriminating. If you look at the ordinance itself, and I'm not sure I have the exact reading of the section 1-1304, the discriminatory acts includes, but is not limited to, all the acts set forth in the Human Relations Act. Thank you.
Public comment. Now is the time.
Good evening, Scott English, 1210 Pumping Station Road, Freedom Township. I'm the business owner at 6668 West High Street in Gettysburg. The Gettysburg Academy would like to ask you for your vote tonight in approval of the zoning text amendment as written. Our events venue will not be an adverse impact to the neighborhood and will bring vitality along with sense of community back to the third ward I remember growing up in. April 25th, we sponsored an open house with 8 attendees. 4 were borough residents, 4 were folks looking to hold events. All praised the property for its upkeep, history, and character, especially praised the adaptive reuse of the property that we're intending to do. There were no concerns from any of the borough residents that attended the open house in regard to noise or parking, only noting that they were glad it was open for the public to finally enjoy the building after 140 years. This location and structure are the perfect use for community activities and events. We are trying to do the right thing, keeping it in our borough tax base and giving back to the local community organizations instead of sending businesses out of town. This property does not affect the housing stock as it was never built as a residence. The cost estimate to replace the historic windows in compliance with the HARB standards is quoted at $173,000. There's 29 windows in that building. Never built as a residence, it's a commercial building. So even if 2 families did live there, I can't imagine them being able to afford replacing the windows. The windows are from 1932. They need to be replaced for energy efficiency. Our options are the commercial use as proposed in the zoning text amendment, develop the green space next door that we own and can be subdivided. I don't want to do that, or go the nonprofit route. Only 6 properties meet the standards in the Elm Street overlay. 6. and only the Academy has the right combination of the property of green space and building availability. I can tell you what the other 5 properties are: the phone company, High Street Brews. I have the list. The plans in place fully support the use, and I'm committed to the community and its future. Thank you very much.
Public comment.
I'm Sue Sipperly. I live at 314 North Stratton Street in Gettysburg, and I've lived in Gettysburg for 25 years, and my career was as a land use planner. The proposed event venue ordinance has focused on a portion of the 3rd Ward known as the Elm Street overlay, but all 3 wards are affected by the changes. Baltimore Street has residential office and Old Town zoning, so does Carlisle Street, plus residential office redevelopment. All of these are included in the event venue ordinance, yet the potential impacts haven't been discussed. Do the residents and owners even realize there's a change coming? A minimum parcel size of 0.5 acres is required if there's going to be outdoor events, but there are no apparent size requirements for an indoor event venue. There could still be parking, buses, and potential noise issues, and the potential for event venues supplanting residential uses. Living next to one could be difficult in all zoning districts where residential is present. This could be a situation like Johns Avenue, where tourist commercial may have seemed like a good idea at the time, but now it's being undone. Event venue really fits best only in general commercial and tourist commercial. In the Elm Street overlay, the same applies. There are no size requirements for indoor venues, so it appears any property could be used in this way. 137 South Washington, newly on the market, is an example. Less than half an acre, but potential for hosting events. Smaller buildings currently used for housing could be used for events, replacing residents. I sent council an email about the 2,000 square foot maximum building size limit for buildings in the residential part of Elm Street. In the proposed ordinance, it is deleted, and I've never really been told why. At the March 28, 2022 work session, council reached unanimous agreement to leave it as it is and did not discuss it any further. The purpose of that size limit was to protect the neighborhood character and prevent the spread of suburban-style commercial into the Elm Street overlay. I provided a map with that email showing a sample of the size of existing buildings, none of which had a footprint of more than 2,000 square feet, except the church, the Methodist Church, just on West High Street. I also provided suggested wording to clarify that section and grandfather any pre-2008 buildings. The Adams County Office of Planning and Development letter of March 21st also agreed that this standard should be retained because it does protect the neighborhood and the character, and instead of allowing larger scale structures and uses. Unintended consequences could happen in all 3 wards if this ordinance goes forward as proposed. I believe it would be worth taking another look.
Public comment.
Good evening. On behalf of the Pennsylvania Downtown Center, my name is Julie Fitzpatrick. I'm the Executive Director. We are a statewide nonprofit organization dedicated solely to the revitalization of the Commonwealth's core communities. And I'd like to support the proposed project at 6668 West High Street, also known as the Gettysburg Academy. My organization, the Pennsylvania Downtown Center, supports the proposed project because it forwards the economic vitality and quality of life component of the mission of the Pennsylvania Downtown Center. We work with nonprofit organizations all over Pennsylvania, as well as local governments and individuals, to enhance the overall well-being and sustainability of Pennsylvania's core communities. We accomplish this mission by engaging local community leaders and volunteers and educating them to advance the sense of place, the quality of life, and economic vitality of the Commonwealth's downtowns or traditional neighborhood business districts and nearby residential areas. As the statewide partner with the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development for the Keystone Communities Main Street and Elm Street programs, and as the Main Street America Coordinating Program, which is a subsidiary of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the Pennsylvania Downtown Center is part of a powerful grassroots network consisting of over 45 coordinating programs in states all over the nation and over 1,600 neighborhoods and communities just like Gettysburg across the country committed to creating high-quality places and building stronger communities through preservation-based economic development. Exactly what you do right here. PDC supports the proposed event venue as it is supported and encouraged by both the 2019 Central Adams Joint Comprehensive Plan and the 2008 Elm Street Plan. The Joint Comprehensive Plan suggested the downtown core is the historic heart of the community, providing commercial, civic, office, and residential uses while providing creative reuse and development projects. This project further idealizes the vision and direction of the plan by actualizing that flexibility should be provided in terms of the use of buildings, and a mixture of neighborhood-oriented residential and non-residential uses should be encouraged. Additionally, this project is supported by the 2008 Gettysburg Elm Street Plan that states that the use of properties within the Elm Street Overlay District provide and serve as a purpose as a transition zone between the borough's downtown, mixed-use, and residential areas. It also is complementary to the vision of the adjacent Baltimore Street's long-range strategy for local economic stability to encourage an opportunity to stimulate a long-term and sustainable local economy. PDC sees this project as a way to honor the history and the heritage of the Gettysburg Academy building, as well as a way to retain the character and legacy of the neighborhood of the Third Ward. We support the request for the text amendment to the Borough Zoning Ordinance to expressly recognize a special events venue use within the Elm Street Overlay District for the event venue at 6668 West High, as it is an ideal opportunity for the community to embrace a project that will enhance the quality of life for local residents, as well as enhance a sense of place for both residents and visitors, and provide long-term economic viability today and into the future. Thank you.
Public comment.
My name is Rosemary Maher. I live at 44 West High Street. I'm going to be brief because I've kind of gone over a lot of this before. But I did want to mention that the current proposal provided by the work session in January 2023 had no more restrictions than the Gettysburg Borough regulations as far as time that it closes and days of the week and that kind of thing. The proposal written in September 22 included those limitations, which would have made it a bit more acceptable to a densely populated residential area. Another question I have is why wasn't the Planning Commission response acknowledged? And they talked about the limitation of the number of days of the week that it could actually be happening, because as it's set right now, there could be tents set up from March to October, actually. And my other point is that unlike Colt Park, a neighborhood of single-family homes, the borough is looking at revising zoning in a very densely populated area to allow major commercial use. Colt Park is moving toward eliminating the commercial zoning to halt the possibility of B&Bs, vacation rentals, and other commercial entities. How is this fair in the same ward? What makes the residents of Colt Park more worthy of a quiet, undisrupted residential neighborhood than the South Washington West High Street neighborhood? Thank you.
Public comment.
Yes, my name's Peggy Reinhardt. I live at 228 South Washington Street. My house actually sits right beside Mr. English's house, and I am totally in favor of what he wants to do. Thank you.
Okay. Public comment.
Evening, Council. I'm Sam Weiser. I represent Mr. English. I also own property at 112 Baltimore Street. As you are acutely aware, you have discussed this issue at length. And thank you for your consideration of the amendment and the public input that you have invited. But there has been no objective reason or any empirical data presented that suggests that moving forward will result in any harm to the community. The ordinance contains express community interest criteria. They are laid out at length. There will not be a proliferation of these venues, as there are limited spaces that meet the criteria for an outdoor event venue. The Elm Street program experts, which includes your prior Elm Street coordinator, it includes your local Main Street coordinator, as well as the state Main Street director, and Ms. Brown, one of the initiators of the Elm Street program, have represented to council that this fits precisely within the intent and the purpose of the Elm Street Overlay District. You've heard from many other residents and property owners who spoke so eloquently this evening in support of moving forward with this amendment. And you've heard from Mr. English, who has stated that his primary goal is the care and preservation of one of the community's unique and priceless historic structures. Neither Scott nor any other historic property owner can bear the enormous expense of maintaining these historical landmarks without a viable revenue stream, and this would provide that. You heard the quote for just the windows alone, which is astronomical. The longer that an adaptive reuse of these unique properties is delayed, the less likely that similar structures will be meticulously maintained and be an asset to this community. But putting aside all of the folks that you heard from, and if you look at your own planning documents, they tell you that you need to move forward. As was mentioned by the state Elm Street director, this is precisely the use that's contemplated by your Elm Street plan. This is precisely the type of use that is contemplated by the Central Adams Joint Comprehensive Plan. So please follow your adopted plans, please listen to the experts, and please move forward by approving the zoning text amendment this evening. Thank you.
Public comment. Okay, seeing no further public comment, we are moving on to current and old business, which begins with our Department of Planning. Ms. Marshall.
Hello.
Get
You
right
all
to
have
it.
my report. I do have two quick announcements. The next Planning Commission meeting is Monday, May 15th at 7 p.m. We have no plans on the agenda, but we do have a presentation by the Adams County Office of Planning and Development relating to the county's comprehensive plan update on the heritage section. And we, of course, also have the standing agenda item for the current rezoning effort. And we have no scheduled zoning hearings for this month. Does anybody have any questions about my report? If not, I have two motions on your agenda.
Any questions from Ms. Marshall besides the motions? So can I have the first motion here is for the 49 parcels of real property on the northwestern side of Johns Avenue.
I'll make a motion to enact an ordinance amending the Gettysburg Borough Zoning Ordinance and amending the official zoning map of Gettysburg Borough for the purpose of rezoning and reclassifying 49 parcels of real property located along and adjacent to the northwestern side of Johns Avenue and the southeastern side of Highland Avenue by removing said parcels of real property from the tourist commercial district and by adding the same to an adjoining low-density residential R1 district.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Questions and discussion.
Just for the record, I do not live in Cole Park. McMillan Street is not part of Cole Park, never was, never will be.
Okay. If you don't know, Colt Park refers to the grounds partially of which were composed of Camp Colt in 1918. That's the reference. And I would agree with your assertion. This area of the zoning map, in my opinion, when it was drawn, I believe in 2007 or 2008, I cannot conclude why this was drawn into tourist commercial, and it almost seems like it had to have been done in error. It does not fit the character of the tourist commercial. It does fit the character of every adjacent block, which is zoned as it would be changed to R1. This came to our attention mostly due to the influx of vacation rental properties and the subsequent erosion of the housing stock. So in the tourist commercial zone, that is a permitted use where you can operate a vacation rental, and it's not in the R1 district. So that's what makes this change really come to our attention, where it has kind of sat on the map for probably the better part of 15 years. Any other questions or comments?
I just have
Yes.
just a comment, because I think it actually addresses some of the housing concerns and needs we have in the borough, and that is, if you look at the transfer of real estate property in the last couple of years that's in the local newspaper, so many corporations are purchasing homes, and instead of families moving in or individuals moving in, you're seeing, it being turned into, commercial rental. And so I was kind of shocked when I kind of followed that for like 6 months, 8 months, and it's incredible to see that, so.
Other questions or comments? All right, if not, Ms. Stahl, this will be a roll call, please.
Mr. Berger?
Aye.
Mrs. Butterfield?
Aye.
Mr. Carr?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Mr. Lawver?
Aye.
Mr. Moon?
Aye.
Mr. Heyser?
Aye.
All yay.
Okay. Someone for the next motion?
I'll make a motion to enact an ordinance amending the text of the Gettysburg Borough Zoning Ordinance for the purposes of establishing and regulating event venue uses within the Borough of Gettysburg.
Is there a
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Questions and comments?
I have.
Ms. Butterfield.
I was in on the Elm Street application process early, and so I was going to speak to my thoughts of what Elm Street stood for today. But Darlene Brown has done such an excellent job at doing that, and thank you to the Pennsylvania Downtown Center also for your words. It fits what I had thought Elm Street's goals were all along. Yes, a neighborhood could be downtrodden and receive financing early on in the hope that that would create a neighborhood of diverse use, diverse ethnicity, and that's, I've seen that happening, evolving in that area. So I regret that Elm Street is being warped and not portrayed accurately in its relationship to this issue. I thank everyone who's come to speak. We have over and over said to each other, we hope that people will come and share their thoughts and share their views. And thank you to the concerned neighbors who have come and spoken, and thank you to those in support of the issue who have come and spoken. This doesn't make our job this evening easier, but it certainly helps in our understanding where the community stands, and I thank you all for speaking up. And thank you, Carly, for all, and Solicitor Eastman, for all the time you have put into this.
Questions and comments?
I'll just make a comment that it is an extremely, it's been a lot of meetings, and whatever way it goes this evening, as this has been voiced before by this council, I want public to know that we do appreciate everyone coming out. We appreciate the letters to the editor. We appreciate the emails, the phone calls. Sometimes I think everyone understands that sometimes you just cannot please everyone. It's just very difficult to do that. Whatever way this goes, there's going to be someone unhappy, and I understand that, and I take that weight on my shoulders, as I think all of my colleagues do. But we really do appreciate everybody coming out and being a part of the local government process. And please also understand that even when we don't agree, we the council and we the public to the council, we can still listen to each other's opinions. We can still be kind humans. And despite rumor, we actually really get along, even though we don't always vote unanimous. Thank you.
Okay. Questions and comments? Ms. Lawson?
I would just like to address my colleagues on council and to the public and those watching at home, and echo what my colleague Ms. Butterfield said regarding thanking the public for coming out. Since January, I think we've all heard from, dozens and dozens of you through phone calls and voicemails and emails and letters to the editor. We take all of those very seriously. I can't remember the last time I felt so torn in terms of this decision-making, because you want to reach consensus. You want to try to find collaboration. You want to try to find ways that will please everyone, and that's been difficult with this. I have talked to so many of you, including this today, in fact. And so I think that I think there are things that we could have done differently regarding the discussion. I wish that we had some of the documents that we received earlier in the process, not just a month ago. I think for those of you who followed this, I think it's like sausage making, in real time that you've seen. I'm confident that our police department will enforce noise ordinances. I'm confident we have a fire code, so if there are indoor venues, events, that they will be enforced, so you can only have a certain amount of people inside. I actually talked to the owner of the property today, and there are some exciting things planned for the exterior in terms of the carriage house, which made me feel comfortable about that. I also learned over the weekend that the Adams County Historical Society has purchased the Jack Hopkins house, and I think that's really exciting. There are some real possibilities there between what could happen at the Academy House, Jack Hopkins house across the street, and I know that the Lincoln Cemetery Board is doing things to really try to improve that. So I think we're all coming together. I would hope that neighbors would reach across the fences and try to find amicable ways to discuss this and not do things that are detrimental in terms of just neighborly. That's me. That's my own personal wanting to have people get along, and that's really up to those out there. But I think I do appreciate the neighbors who have come out in the Baltimore Street, Washington Street, and High Street who've talked to us. So I just want to thank you for that. Thanks. And I do have back issues, which is why I'm standing up. Thank you.
Questions and comments? All right, I'll comment that this is not probably by far the longest zoning discussion in terms of months that we've been in. I know it's been stated many times how long this has been, but we've done certainly longer. And that's often required to be really diligent with these things. And I do want to make sure that I thank the members of council who've really done a very diligent job over the months. And I know that some of the members of the public at times have been frustrated because it seems that people's minds change, and I would have to tell you that that's how this functions. It can be difficult sometimes to know where the members stand from month to month. It can be difficult to write an ordinance or get us to a conclusion with an ordinance that we think may be a viable, passable ordinance. So that can be challenging. I guess as with the other process that I recall from some years ago, of course, one of the most disturbing things in these public sessions is when so many things that are misattributed or simply stated that are not true, and that can be bothersome. So please, anytime you go through anything like this, make sure that you read the documents when they're made available. Do not take anyone's statements just at face value, because there are quite a few things that have been said on both sides of this discussion over the months that just aren't accurate, either in terms of the factual nature of the situation or in terms of the law. This is an ordinance that will address not just a single property. I know that property has been the focus, but it does address multiple properties across multiple zones that this could apply in. And if this were a parcel that sat in a virgin meadow and we were planning a new city or a new town, perhaps I would feel differently. But that's not the situation that we are dealt here. We are dealing with a property that sits in a transitional area between commercial and residential. We're dealing with a zone or an overlay that was laid out very carefully. And after reviewing all those materials over the months, I have trouble reaching the same conclusion that others have, that this is exactly what was intended in the Elm Street area. Some of that comes to the definition of mixed use and how people refer to a mixed use neighborhood. In my background in education and undergrad and planning, studies. When I look at mixed use, I think of within the same structure, if not in the same structure, then on the same parcel. When I read the Elm Street comments from those years ago, a lot of what they're attempting to do is difficult. They're reflecting upon a day gone by, when you had a business on the first floor and people lived above, and you do see a lot of those types of structures if you go down South Washington Street, where you can tell at one time that was a commercial viable enterprise on the first floor, and it just is not the case anymore. So in totality, looking at everything, with the package that we reached when everything was finished, which has considerably less restrictions than we were discussing towards the winter of this past year, I will not to be voting in favor of this particular ordinance as it is constructed. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I'll say I have to agree with you there on all of your points. There have been a lot of circular arguments, a lot of false arguments, a lot of people supporting the application who are arguing against each other, often in the space of a breath. It's pretty amazing. But when push comes to shove, what's being done here is adding a commercial use in a residential neighborhood. And this section of the Third Ward does have a history with some commerce. And if you know that history, you know it's pretty ugly, and it's not something that we should be celebrating. There are a number of things I want to say, but I'm not going to say about this application. We've spent a lot of time, I think, with an effort to say that we're talking about something that is going to apply more broadly and not just to one particular property. But in this case, we are talking about something that applies to one particular property. Zoning is tricky. It's hard. It's contentious. There's really not much. I said this last month. There's really not much we do here that's going to be as contentious as telling people what they can and cannot do with their property. And the process of drawing these maps is difficult, especially when zones meet, where we have commercial butting up against residential is often contentious. I think it's noteworthy that the version we're voting on here tonight is not only much more permissive than the compromise version that we all worked very hard to come up with, but it's even more permissive than what the applicant originally asked for. And it's not in line with the recommendations of our planning commission or the counties. That said, I think I can tell which way the vote is going, but I do once again want to urge my colleagues here to err on the side of caution, pump the brakes, and come up with a version that is the compromise that protects the interests of residents as well as promoting this commercial use.
I had a question for my colleague, Mr. Moon. How would we accomplish that to reach that point at this point where we are now? What's
what are you
recommended?
asking me? The logistics?
Yeah, I'm just curious about it because you're putting that out as a possibility.
If this vote were to fail and we wanted to revisit the previous draft, previous to January of this year, we could do that. We could open that back up, debate it, and see if it's something we want to pursue.
I've talked to some colleagues who were not in favor of special exception, but those who voted no, so that's a...
Yeah, the mechanics would be that, and I'll be very frank, we would have to have a very good concept, a very pretty reasonable idea of what any changes would be, right, to avoid, essentially circular, discussion. But that would occur at a future work session as early as the end of this month. It would then require an additional advertisement period, hearing. There would be several steps that we have done here just recently that would be repeated, as would with the enactment of any ordinance. That if that were to be the case, that's how that would function. And I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head, when we would be talking about in terms of finality, but I would estimate probably July, August at the earliest would be how that would work.
July or August for discussion of it, in other words. In
No,
terms of-
no, for enactment, and that would be assuming that, there was a specific, set of changes. And candidly, in our discussion back in the winter, that was a very difficult part of it, trying to get people to, come to some sort of agreement about, all right, are we talking about which days of the week and how often? And that was one of the difficulties of this whole process is, it's a lot of reading to do to try to get an idea of how it functions and the history of the matter. But no matter how that works out, the ordinance itself just has so many different caveats. There are so many different things to consider. To land 4 people on a singular point is just challenging.
Yeah. Right.
So that's how we got to this point this evening, right? Is we had a few more restrictions, and then we had a work session. I believe it would have been January or February, and we went through that discussion point by point, and we had 4 people with the draft that we have now. So that's where we are.
Thank you.
Okay, certainly. Any other questions or comments? All right. Again, I would thank the members for all their work over the months. I hope that the members of the public can see that, in many ways, I believe that you are heard by the council members. I know that several of them have been thinking very, very long and hard about what to do here and how to reach a conclusion. Okay. So, if there are no other questions or comments, Ms. Stoll, the roll, please.
Mr. Berger?
Nay.
Mrs. Butterfield?
Having today reacquainted myself with Chapter 6 of our ordinances that control conduct, alcohol consumption, curfew, duties of permittee, and noise, I vote yes.
Mr. Carr?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Mr. Lawver?
Aye.
Mr. Moon?
Nay.
Mr. Heyser?
Nay.
4 yea, 3 nay.
All right, very good. Any other questions for Ms. Marshall? Okay, if not, moving on to Ms. English.
Thank you. You have my report, and I don't have any items for a motion this evening. However, we do have a workshop for rain barrels on May 11th. We had 27 people sign up and interested in making those for illicit discharge for stormwater management, and I had a second class I needed to create for 25 additional folks, and I have 8 on a waiting list. So it's been very popular, and people are very interested in the workshop for best management practices. So we are going to take a lot of pictures, and we invited Mr. Hale to maybe do an article on it. So I think it's going to be a great event and a lot of community input to help out with the flooding and illicit discharge for the MS4 program and our public outreach that's required.
Yeah, I think that's been a great outcome. If you're not aware, as an MS4 affected community, as many in this area are not, this is one of our required educational opportunities, but I like that the fact there's actually been a lot of inquiry of people from even beyond the borough. They're saying, well, why not us? Well, it started with the borough because we're required to do this type of thing, and it really is a good practice in terms of reusing using your rainwater. Any questions for Ms. English this evening? All right, not seeing any. Moving on to Ms. Fissel, parking.
Good evening. You'll have my report. All the comparisons are there as usual, and the only thing I'd like to say is the LPPs are still very high and very popular. It's a great deal for $35 for the month of parking.
Any questions for Ms. Fissel? Seeing none, moving on to Mr. Harbaugh.
Good evening. You should have my report. Some highlights on my report. Brush Week is coming up, May 27th, the week of May 22nd, for the residents that are watching. We'll be around twice that week to pick up brush from curbside or along the alley. Culps Run, the decaying sycamore tree has come down. It was removed. Once we receive our DEP permits, sometime in June, July, we'll be starting the restoration and maintenance to that bank out there, which will also be done through the agility program as well, to utilize some equipment that other municipalities have that we don't have. Shade tree, we just got done planting 19 trees for the spring planting of this year. And we are starting to, next week, we will be starting to pre-stage blocks for the Memorial Day Parade.
Okay. I always appreciate how efficient you are with your staffing in that way.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Harbaugh?
What is aerial class?
Aerial? That's a fire department class. I put it on my calendar.
Oh, okay.
So it reminds me. Yeah.
We getting a helicopter for DPW?
No.
No, mostly hydraulics and
hydraulics.
forces and
Yeah.
things of that nature.
It's aerial truck operations.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Harbaugh? Okay, that takes us to Mr. Clayball, the engineer.
Good evening. You have a copy of my written report in your packet. There has been a lot going on for engineering. This is the time of the year to get all the projects out on the street. First on my report, you'll notice that there is no update on the Gettysburg Gateway Connectivity Project. We're still waiting for PennDOT to sign that notice to proceed and the reimbursement agreement. So the Gettysburg Interloop Phase B project, gave you an update on that. As you know, we will continue to debate the one-way on the alley. Also, I noted in my report here that we might end up needing to break this project into 2 phases to complete the construction, and that's because of a deadline by the CDBG funding source. As you know, we have about a dozen different funding sources that we're juggling, and the CDBG funding source does have a deadline of early 2025. So in order to meet that deadline, there may be a need to continue to move forward with just the North Washington Street component, which also includes that stormwater pipe and the Gettysburg Municipal Authority's water line. So I'll continue to give you some more information on that as we move forward, but there is an item on our agenda for applying for additional grant work, which I'll come back to whenever I complete my report here. The next item is the 2023 street maintenance project. Last month you gave me authorization to advertise for bids for that. We did open bids. They were significantly higher than what we anticipated. So I reported here, whenever I sent my report last week, that we would be providing tabulation for you guys to consider tonight. We're going to be asking at this point that we hold on that discussion until your workshop. I did talk to your manager earlier today, and I'm going to be asking for you guys to make a decision on that in 2 weeks from now to give us a chance to deliberate the bids that we received, come up with some options. Just to give you the flavor, is our budgeting about $200,000. Our bids came in at almost $300,000. So we think there's some things there that we can cut from the bids. Some things that were just too high and not in the borough's best interest to move forward with. So I'm going to be meeting with Robbie tomorrow and Wednesday, as well as manager, and we're going to come up with some recommendations for you guys to discuss. And then hopefully make that decision at your workshop meeting in 2 weeks from now.
We'll need to advertise a special meeting.
Okay.
Just prior to that.
I mean, and I don't. It's not all bad news. We did get there's 2 contracts out. One for the surface treatments, one for the paving, and we did get a bidder for both of those. There are plenty of good things in it. We're going to be able to capture from the bids, and we're going to have a successful project. So I don't want to paint a completely bad light on this project. We are going to be able to complete the project. We just want to have a chance to make sure that we're thinking this through properly before we proceed. The next thing is the annual Racehorse Alley parking garage maintenance. The work on that project is continuing to move forward. We are working with the parking department to make sure that the parking garage is going to be open the next 2 weekends. We understand there's some events going on. Most of the work is going to be complete this week. I anticipate that whenever I give the report next month, it'll also be with an application for payment, and we'll be finished with the project. Really not a whole lot to write home about other than that. The next item is the bridge maintenance contract, and again, there is an item on your agenda to authorize me to move forward with the bidding of that. We're complete with the permitting at this point, and we're ready to move forward with bids. I'll come back to that when I get to the motions. And then also included in my report, I gave you some things for the stormwater authority. Of course, we did not meet tonight because there wasn't anything important that we needed a decision on. But there are a couple of items that I wanted to mention. The Mayor Alley stream restoration project, as Robbie said, we did the trees down at this point, so we are submitting with the permitting. The permitting of that project is also tangential to the bridge work. So as soon as we get that permit, that'll give Robbie his authorization to go in there and complete that project. Also, I wanted to mention the Stevens Run channel wall analysis is continuing to move forward. We're looking to focus our efforts on Bream Alley and work on that project in conjunction with the Gettysburg Municipal Authority. We're going to be tag teaming with them during the replacement of their interceptor line along that alley. Aside from that, on your agenda, there are two motions. As I noted, the first one is for the bridge maintenance project. Again, this is just to authorize me to advertise it. The way the calendar works and with some vacation schedules and stuff, we're not looking to award next month. We're looking to award in the July. This still gives us plenty of time to get the project finished by the end of the year. And then the other motion is, as I mentioned, we are still continuing to look for money for the Gettysburg Interloop Phase B project. Last year, we submitted a grant application for GTRP, that's Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program. We're looking to reapply for that. We were denied that funds last year. We would like to reapply this year. Our consultant, Michael Baker International, has everything packaged up, ready to go for us. They'll basically be just resubmitting what they did last year with new dates on it. So that the grant amount is in the amount of $250,000. It doesn't change the borough's obligation for the project at all. It's just reapplying for the same grant that we looked for last year. So that is all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Questions for Mr. Clayball? All right, if not, can we have the bridge maintenance motion, please?
I'll make a motion to authorize the borough engineer to advertise the 2023 Gettysburg Borough Bridge Maintenance Project for construction bids.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments about the maintenance project bid process? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and the Greenways.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 050823-1, authorizing Charles R. Gable, MPA Borough Manager, and Sarah L. Stahl, Assistant Borough Manager, to submit on behalf of Gettysburg Borough a Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program, GRTP, grant application to the Commonwealth Financing Authority for construction money in the amount of $250,000 for the construction of the Gettysburg Interloop, GIL, Phase B1 and Phase B2 project.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Questions or comments about the Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program grant application? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Mr. Clayball, because it's you and the chief's reports kind of back up against each other, last work session we had some thoughtful public comment regarding 4th Street, speed, the concept of installing a stop sign at Barlow Street. And I just ask you to just address kind of in brief traffic warrants with PennDOT and how all of that functions.
Yeah, so if there's multiple things you can do to control speeds, in addition to the law enforcement. one of the things that's a common misconception is that you can just put up a stop sign. There's plenty of documentation through PennDOT, through the Federal Highway Administration's MUTCD, that's a Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, that suggests that stop signs are not intended to be a speed control device. In fact, there's even studies that show that if you put a stop sign in, sometimes it increases the speeds at the approach streets because they try to hurry up before and afterwards. So the reality of it, sometimes stop signs do control speed, they do help, but it is not intended to be a speed control. I think that needs to be clear. If you wanted to look into any type of a speed reduction device, there does need to be a warrant analysis done and a traffic impact study done, and then ultimately, if the warrant analysis and the traffic impact study would show that there is a warrant for various reasons, sight distances, crash data, speeds, we would measure the speeds of the cars, and if they would meet that 85th percentile, then you could potentially move forward with having an ordinance ultimately that you would have to adopt to create these devices so the law enforcement could actually enforce those devices. But I think the only other thing that I wanted to say is you have to be a bit careful, and the reason why that there's all of these steps and procedures, the warrant analysis and the ordinance procedure, is because we do get a lot of these requests, pretty much annually. And pretty much every year that I've been here, there's been a different street that comes up that we've talked about the speeds on. So you got to be careful that you're not just opening Pandora's box or can of worms or whatever metaphor you want to use there with. If you can remember, just last year it was Long Lane. We had a public meeting where the folks on Long Lane wanted a stop sign, and there were speed concerns there. And whenever we did the speed studies, we found out that the 85th percentile actually wasn't that high. So I would suggest that if you are going to be looking into it, that you do the proper studies, you do the proper homework, because there's always two sides to every story, whenever it comes to the speed limits. And you can't just necessarily put a stop sign at every single intersection of every street of the borough. That would just be impractical. So you have to be really careful about where you do it, because everybody else is going to want to have a stop sign, then at their intersection. So I'm not saying that there isn't some justification there on 4th Street. I'm just saying that there is a lot more to it than just throwing up a stop sign or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's what I was looking for. I never want to in any way sound dismissive to members of the public, but it is very difficult. We used to have Mr. Shestott, talk about the alleys back here, and we know that there are speeding problems. I think that 4th Street is a known street. I remember when I took my driver's test, that's where they used to take you, hoping that the needle would go over 25 miles per hour. And Chief, can you speak a bit to enforcement and so forth?
Right, in reference to the stop signs, there's scads of documentation out there as you can't just throw up a stop sign for speed control purposes, and I could be wrong, but I think there's probably even a few cases out there that say no, that stop sign is not properly placed. And if you put a stop sign up improperly, just with any other traffic control device, it's technically not enforceable. We can't enforce it. We have done some speed details out on 4th Street. I've actually sat out there myself on a couple of occasions. Just last week we had 2 officers out there for a little while, and we got no speeders. We had an officer out there approximately a month ago, and we did get one person that was in excess of the 10 mile per hour over the speed limit, and that person was stopped. But there's only been 1 or 2 vehicles that have been noted to be speeding, and oftentimes when we sit out there and we have to put up our NRAD, which stands for Enforcement Device Non-Radar, which are the 2 things on the side of the road. A lot of folks know to look for them. If they see those, that slows them down. If we're running VASCAR in a position where we have to sit to be able to see 2 fixed points, you see the police car. So I think that our best avenue from an enforcement standpoint is flying the flag or showing the colors, if you will, on the street on a rotating basis. And I wish I could have somebody out there every other day or every day, but we just don't have the staffing to accomplish that. And and there's a rotation, and Mr. Clayball's right, we've got all these complaints of speed, so from Log Lane to Middle Street to 4th Street, so the stop signs are right down here, so we keep the officers rotating through those, and they sit as time permits. And, I wish I had a better answer.
What I'm hearing though is like if it's, when it's a known thing, when we have a presence, people slow down, which is the entire goal.
That our goal is
Compliance,
safety
right?
and compliance, yes.
Yep. So, all right, sounds good. Okay, anything else for Mr. Clayball? I don't want to cut him off if they have questions. Yes.
Chad, could you in layman's terms explain the 86 percentile warrant that goes along with the stop signs? Because I don't think the general public understands what that means.
You're very close, 85th percentile.
Okay.
Yeah, but so when you do a speed study, to warrant a reduction in a speed limit sign, you have to show that 85% of the traffic is going more than 5 miles an hour below that speed limit. So that's tough. They use the 5 mile an hour rule just because our speeds, our signs are increments of 5 miles an hour. You never see a 23 mile an hour stop
Below
sign.
or above?
You would have to, if you want to reduce the speed limit, you have to show that it's 85% of the vehicles are going more than 5 mile an hour below the posted speed limit. If you wanted to increase the speed limit, it would be the opposite way around, if that was your goal. Now, sometimes you could look to reduce the speed limit and it actually be higher and may warrant a higher speed limit. I've heard of that happening before. I don't anticipate that would be something that would happen in the borough. But there is sometimes there's a perception that people are going faster or slower and they're actually not. So sometimes it's misleading whenever they actually look into the study. But that's what it is. It's 85% of the speeds need to be 5 mile an hour or more below the speed limit to justify a sign reduction.
So we're already at 25, so we can't lower it any lower than that.
Right.
Even with
Yeah, anything below that is typically, and I've heard different schools of thought of that, but the typical school of thought that you hear from most traffic engineers is below 25 is advisatory. So it's not really enforceable anyway. So.
Just want to make sure the public knows they're heard. I just don't want to also paint too fanciful a picture of how this operates if this is done. And we do have sign ordinance issues and sidewalk ordinance issues that have been lying in the queue for quite some time. And our capital improvement plan, which has been well organized, our second, my time here, really anticipates these projects on a long scale, on a large scale, on a long timeline. So we're not going to be able to be as reactionary as we might hope. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Clayball before we go to the chief? Chief Glennie, sir.
My report, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on that. We did do the physical agility and written test today for applicants. We had 7 applicants. We came out of at the end of the day with 4 that passed physical agility and the written portion to move on to the oral boards. So it's been a long process. We got several more than we had last time, not as many as I'd have liked. So.
With 4 for the orals, does that mean we should be able to accomplish that in one day?
Yes.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Half day almost. I think they had told us they could do 8. So if you're not, what the chief's referring to is the civil service process. Our police officers are hired for their civil service in order to provide equal opportunity. The physical agility is a pass-fail, and then the written test and the interview panel are combined, and then candidates are ranked. This is a big change for us because we opened this up to the non-certified general public. You had to be 21 basically, and there was not much else. And so we're a little better off than we were a few years ago. We literally had a process where we received 0 applications. But I think, as we all know, it's challenging to get people to go into law enforcement. And it's challenging to find employees in general right now. Those candidates will go through the interview panel. We'll get a ranked list, and hopefully we intend on dealing with that in June because the academy starts in July. Okay.
Yes, so it's a pretty fast pace from here on out. I believe the oral boards are in 2 weeks, and then depending on the outcome of those, we'll start background investigations, which can be lengthy. So we're going to be.
No, it's really tight on this one, and I'd like to thank the chief in trying to make all that work. And the mayor is not able to be with us this evening, but she and the chief really spent a lot of time recruiting and trying to get people to apply for this process, which is, again, just very challenging. I think that this is, the widest net that we have cast in it's been at least a decade that I've been on civil service, and we had always required people to be certified. So this is a major change. I wish we'd had more applicants, but I will take who applied.
We have a couple other tactics, I guess, for lack of a better term, that we can use if we have a longer process. But because this one was kind of compacted to get folks into a July academy setting, they wouldn't have to spend the money to bring those to fruition. Probably wouldn't have yielded anything either. Again, that's a big probably, but yes, ma'am.
I know we talked offline before about the program at the high school, at Gettysburg High School. Have you thought any more about ways to try to either engage those young people? And I mean, it would not be immediate. It would be 4 years, 5 years down the road. But just there is a group of like cadets. I think they're.
The answer is the short answer is yes. And I've been looking into a lot of other things and trying to reinstitute some community programs and things like that, and maybe bring this in. And the one that comes to mind that used to be popular all over, but we haven't seen it in a while, is a law enforcement explorer program with the high school age kids, and then a camp cadet program in the summer that are applied for. The camp cadet thing would take a lot of doing to do locally. The state police do one, and the younger folks around here have the opportunity to get involved with that. But I'd really like to see one start locally, but that takes a lot of behind the scenes work and a lot of volunteer hours and a lot of things. But I have been thinking about the Explorer program and trying to get some officers into doing that, and hopefully once we get these officers through the civil service process on, it'll free up a little time for some of the other guys to start working on some of these projects. So yes, and I appreciate that suggestion, and I have been looking around for different
and maybe
avenues.
if you get younger officers that can go out to help with the recruiting process, but also scouting programs, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, to try to get more women.
The Explorers the Explorer program actually was an offshoot of the Boy Scouts movement.
Okay.
But that's really something I'd really like to see starting, and not just for us. I think we'd have to open it up regionally to get the numbers if we can get any. But we have looked into it. Yes, Patty.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Lawver.
Out of curiosity, any of the 4 certified?
Depends on your definition of certification. I think you're going to have to go to the academy. One that I believe is in the academy now. So he's in the Harrisburg Academy and would graduate sometime early July. Some of the other candidates I know were federal officers. I don't know the specifics, but we would probably, well, there's no probably to it, we would be just as well off to send them to the academy as to try to piecemeal a certification through with a waiver.
But at least it shows that opening the civil service rates made a hell of a difference.
Yes, it did.
We went from 0 to 4. It's not a gigantic number, but
well, and actually, even though they didn't pass, we were at 7. So it was, infinitely better than 0.
And one of the discussions we were aware that one of these candidates is in the academy. I believe we discussed earlier about MOPEC reimbursing costs of the academy to 75% level. When we are here for the work session in May, we will be discussing the concept of reimbursing that person if they were to be hired for their academy, if that's something we would like to do or not. On the MOPEC end, it would require the borough's involvement, and we need to get some assertions from MOPEC that it would indeed work, but we can have a discussion about whether it would be the 75% that MOPEC provides, or we could do 100%, with the borough making up the other portion. And we're talking about, in total, probably around $7,000 or $8,000.
Yeah.
So for the borough portion, closer to 2.
I just happened to notice today, just for informational purposes, on my way up to Hack, where they did the testing today, that there's Hagerstown is hiring police officers, and there's a billboard up that way, as well as one down on 30 and
I saw that
several
on
all
30
over the
West,
place.
yeah.
And their salary, and then Hagerstown, just for point of reference, is offering a $20,000 hiring bonus for officers.
Let's keep that quiet.
Yeah.
I saw that billboard. And if you're wondering why we would consider reimbursing the rest of the academy's expense, it's because when the mayor and the chief were at basically a hiring fair, more or less it
Yes,
was,
and-
that's a practice that other municipalities
Yeah.
are using. So if you want to be competitive, you have to act to be competitive. Okay, any other questions for the chief?
I would like to thank Sarah and Kara and the civil service, members of the Civil Service Commission for especially for this process, as compacted as it was. Kara's done a wonderful job, the human resources coordinator, of getting the applications and keeping everybody in the loop. And I appreciate her efforts, and I want to make sure public knows.
It's an intense process. It's a practice that exists because of a time when practices were inherently unfair, completely, and it was designed to address that. So I know that many places do not have to deal with it. Townships, for instance, do not, the second class, but boroughs do, and so we are. All right, Mr. Gable, Ms. Stahl.
I don't have anything to add. With a bunch of motions on there. Charles will go through those.
I'd just make a comment in addition to my written report to council. I don't have a lot to highlight other than March's pillow text numbers came in this afternoon. I've made several comments in recent meetings about we're busy. And anecdotally, I know I personally eat at numerous eating establishments in town, and when I have the opportunity, I ask either the owners or the server, how was your winter months? And across the board, what's been reported to me personally is this is the first season they say they did not have a slow season. And our pillow text numbers show that for March. It's a record. $10,912 came to the borough's coffers in the month of March. You can see the preceding Marches, no number dating back to 2014 is above $10,000 for the month of March. This is on top of strong numbers for both January and February. So I think the efforts of multiple organizations who put on special events, the diversity of our businesses in town, the amenities, the products that they're offering, make Gettysburg a desirable place to be. So, I like to trumpet the horn once in a while, and I think as a community, everyone is doing what they need to do to keep a vibrancy here, even in what was traditionally slow months. We don't have those apparently in 2023. Aside from that, a motion with reference to a contract. We did open the bids today, and second motion will be awarded to C.E. Williams Sons Incorporated. They are the only responsive and responsible bidder for the equipment this year.
Okay. C.E. Williams and Sons Incorporated. Any questions for the manager or Ms. Stahl before we start with the motions? We can return at the end as needed. All right, if not, the bills and payrolls, please.
Make a motion to approve all bills and payrolls for the month as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second from either Mr. Moon or Mr. Carr. Your choice, sir. Any questions or comments about the bills and payrolls? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The contract for C.E. Williams.
I'll make a motion to award a contract to C.E. Williams and Sons Incorporated as the lowest qualified responsible and responsive bidder for the rental of heavy construction vehicles and equipment as set forth in the borough's specifications and instruction to bidders.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Questions or comments about the heavy construction vehicle contract? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next, Crabtree, Rohrball and Associates.
I'll make a motion to authorize Charles R. Gable, MPA Borough Manager, to sign a contract with Crabtree, Rohrball and Associates for architectural services for the Gettysburg Welcome Center, with the obligations of each party delineated in the agreement between the owner and architect.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second, either Mr. Carr or Mr. Berger. Questions or comments? Architecture for the Brown House.
Yeah. It's no longer referred to as the Brown House. We're going to refer to it as the Gettysburg Welcome Center.
I didn't think Brown House went correctly into a motion. So I figured you called it that.
We affectionately refer to it as the Brown House. I would just note that this motion sets in motion a series of events that are going to become top of mind in the next several months related to the Gettysburg Welcome Center. Maybe Ms. Sellers can elaborate a little bit on this in the Main Streets report at the end of this meeting. I guess it's not too soon to let the public know that the borough will be presenting formally to HARB, the Historic Architectural Review Board, at the June meeting to discuss what is envisioned for that site. And Crabtree Architects is central to what we hope will happen at that site. So this motion starts the train moving down the track, as they say.
Without a design, you can't build a building.
That is correct.
Did we put an RFP out for architects, or?
It's a professional service, so we're not required to.
Right.
There is a local architect who has been intimately and integrally involved with this project from the beginning. If you remember, previous motions referenced a different architect. The local person who's involved with Crabtree, Rohrball and Associates was formerly with the previous architect. So out of deference to the architect that's our local person, we thought it was best to continue with that consistency.
Okay.
And this design includes public restrooms for visitors, is that correct?
It involves several aspects, and that will all be discussed at HAR, but there will be multiple public family-style restrooms, ADA accessible. There'll be a second level with potentially rentable office space.
Okay.
And then, of course, it'll also be a bus transit stop along the Rabbit Transit's route. And, of course, there'll be the component for out front for visitors to come in and learn more about Gettysburg.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so our architect changed firms, and we'd like to keep our architect. Okay. Any other questions or comments about the motion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next, the resolution.
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution number 050823-2, authorizing the disposition of a certain identified records of various departments of the Borough of Gettysburg in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Records Act and the Municipal Records Manual, consistent with the borough's intention to follow the schedules and procedures for the disposition of records as set forth therein pursuant to Gettysburg Borough Council Resolution number 021020-4, adopted by the Borough Council on February 10, 2020.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and second. Any questions or comments about the disposition of records? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Sanders.
I'll make a motion to appoint David Sanders as a member of the Civil Service Commission of the Borough of Gettysburg for a term of 6 years, expiring in May 2029.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to reappoint David Sanders to the Civil Service Commission. Dave has been the chair of the commission for many years. And he's an important part of this process when we hire police officers. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say Dave has been not just doing this a long time, but he's dedicated to it. He's dedicated to the process of the Civil Service Commission. And I'd like to point out that all three of these next motions are people who are being reappointed to our ABCs. These are volunteers in our community who are willing to serve the community of Gettysburg, and our government simply cannot function without people on our 10 different ABCs. I want to thank all three of these people who are willing to reappoint and give their time voluntarily. And for the general public, we are always accepting applications for our 10 ABCs. So if you're willing to serve the community, we would love to have you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'd like to abstain. Dave's a longtime personal friend of mine, so I would just like to abstain from this vote.
Do you have a fiduciary? Do you have any kind of financial involvement?
Not now.
Okay.
I'm sure that John is allowed to vote pursuant to the requirements of the Ethics Act, so.
Okay. Well, I'll accept that. We have to be cautious, right, about abstentions. That's one of the things
Right.
you have to be very careful about how many or under what circumstances people abstain. Okay, so this is not close. We'll accept that. All right. Did I ask if all were in favor? Okay, we voted on. Okay, sorry. Ms. Ruff.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 050823-3, appointing Marion Ruff as a member of the Gettysburg Borough Code Enforcement Appeals Board for a 5-year term of office commencing on March 15th, 2023 and expiring on March 15th, 2028.
Second.
Okay, a motion and second. Questions and comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Murdoch.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 050823-4, appointing John Murdoch as a member of the Gettysburg Borough Code Enforcement Appeals Board for a 5-year term of office expiring March 2027.
Second.
Okay, a motion and second. Any questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Gable or Ms. Stull? All right, if not, we'll move on to liaison reports. Ms. Sellers.
My report, a few things to highlight this evening. Earlier in April, we had a luncheon to celebrate volunteers, so I just wanted to highlight that real quick again, appealing to Mr. Moon's comment and Mr. Heyser's comments about the fact that we can't do anything about so many projects and programs we have without volunteers. So if anyone has other volunteer time that they want to give, they can certainly contact Main Street Gettysburg for opportunities. The facade improvement program is in its second round, so we still have monies to award, so I encourage applications. They're due on May 26th, so if they have any questions out in the business community about the availability of that program, I encourage them to contact me and get an application in before May 26th. If I said March, I apologize. And going back to the Gettysburg Welcome Center, so lots going on with that. I know we've been talking about that off and on for the last couple of years that I've been here, but there's really some major steps that are being taken forthcoming. So Charles mentioned that next June 21st is going to be the HARB presentation, so that we will lay out where this project is going. Crabtree Rohrbach is an integral part of that process. The architect in question is local Adams County and has been working on this project since about 2017. So we're really going to see a realization of that original concept come together. Very exciting things that have been happening in the support aspect of this program. So Main Street Gettysburg has been touting this for several years. In the last couple of years, we've
had contributions in about $117,000 in contributions over the last 2 years. This year, I'm excited to announce a couple of things right now. One is support from the Adams County Community Foundation. We received a $20,000 grant from the Forward Fund at Adams County Community Foundation. So very excited to have the Community Foundation as part of our partnership in reaching out into Adams County and Gettysburg to look for funding as we start to talk about a capital campaign so we can move forward past the HARB application. The second huge announcement that I have is earlier in February this year, we organized 3 applications to Congress. So for the Congressional Appropriations Community Project Fund. It's designed through each federal official. So we completed 3 different applications. I am pleased to announce that all 3 applications were forwarded to the Appropriations Committee for consideration. This is unique. Having 3 nominations for the same project does not happen often. So I'm really excited about the federal support that that's getting. We will not have notification of that probably until later this summer to see when the language makes the appropriations bill, the budgets bill. But that won't be official, of course, until it's passed in the federal budget. But really great indications that we have support from all of the leadership that we have that has been so supportive throughout so many projects, the Baltimore Street project and the Welcome Center in particular. So those are some of the bricks that we're laying at this point towards this plan. I'd be happy to discuss it with anybody. We have lots of details forthcoming, so watch for announcements and press releases as we see more and more support coming together for this very important program. And I encourage people to please come see me if you have questions about this project. There's lots of details and lots of really exciting things going on with it. We've considered it very carefully over these last 5 years, so it's not taken lightly, and I'm anxious to start sharing it with the public. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Good.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
The Recreation Authority, Mr. Carr.
I just want to give a plug for the Adams County Farmers Market that had their opening day recently. For everyone to know that is out at the rec park now, Saturdays 7 to 1. And they're getting some very nice crowds. I will say I miss it downtown, but the rec park is just a little ways there, and they are getting very nice crowds, so that's good.
The Municipal Authority, Mr. Berger.
We had our annual audit. GMA received an unmodified audit opinion, which is the best you can receive. There was no findings. We're on sound footing. The Heritage tank had some minor repairs. It's currently holding. It's not necessarily a problem. They're keeping an eye on it. Cemetery Hill tank, the rehabilitation is coming soon. They're finalizing paperwork. And they're going to put out a bid soon. Andrews Well is moving along as well, getting it permitted through the state. Our meeting was the 17th, so it's been a few weeks, but talked to Mark Geist today, and it seems with Bream Alley, GMA, and the Stormwater Authority are working together in conjunction to fulfill each other's needs. You didn't have a meeting tonight, but we're moving forward with that.
Good. The bid, Mrs. Butterfield.
Yes, the farmer's market was mentioned. Bid is looking at ways to get some cross signage going because the crowds have been huge at the rec park during the farmer's market, and Steinwehr would like to take advantage of that. Good and lengthy conversation about the Christmas festival and Steinwehr's involvement in that. There were some questions about permitting that will go on, and I wanted to ask if perhaps, Carly, if perhaps you could come to one of the meetings and answer any questions that they have, certainly better than I. And they voted to make a financial contribution to the vintage baseball, which is coming back. And those groups really support Steinware when they're here, both with their motel stays and their meals at Gettysburg Gettys. And so I'm pleased that they're going to continue to financially support that.
Very good. Would you like to continue with the COG, please? The mayor's not with us. So.
I'm sorry.
You want to continue with the COG? The mayor's not with us this evening.
Well, I happened to be at the Boroughs Association.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can
a friend was
you
doing
can report on that also then.
Was doing the program that night, and they're meeting next Monday night.
Okay.
So I'm sure she'll be able to attend that. Okay, the COG, the program was Well Flight, the helicopter system that would come and swoop you away if you had been hit by a bus. Very informative. There are 3 crew members on each helicopter: pilot, nurse, and medical technician. I was interested to hear they are not affiliated with WellSpan. They are an independent private company. And it was said that the usual fee, not the average, but the usual fee if you are airlifted out is $168, and that seems low to me for a helicopter ride, but what do I know? Sarah, the county sale is coming up of office supplies and equipment. They'll be publicizing that. There'll be furniture, office equipment, and so on. The box to receive your ballots for the upcoming election is now at the courthouse. And Torrin Ecker was there to speak as a legislator. He talked about the pending legislation that affects Adams County, and the chief would be interested to hear he announced the radar legislation is still not moving forward. When my husband was on council back years ago, the radar legislation was being pushed. Well, John knows, he's been in on that.
We're going to get radar next year for the whole 35 years I've been a police officer, so it's not shocking.
I know. And finally, Destination Gettysburg is a member of COG and gives a report and said exactly what Charles just mentioned a moment ago. The numbers are up of visitors, and if you drive through town on the weekend, you see that's true. And Steinware bid people have been saying also that their numbers are up. Though it's not in Gettysburg, there was conversation at COG about the opening of Savorhood, the new restaurant by the Pike, and the announcement was made by one of the county commissioners. They do not accept cash, so do not go with a pocket full of cash thinking you will pay your bill. I find it interesting. They then said they would like buses of school children. A school child has a $5 bill in his pocket his mom gave him that morning and saying, "Here, buy your lunch." He doesn't have a plastic card. So that may have to be revisited, but I'm eager to try Savorhood.
Okay, interesting. Habby.
Yep,
Yes.
Happy is working with their partners out on Carlisle Street and Biglerville Road to try to get that passage of the walkway that would take pedestrians and bicyclists across Carlisle, Biglerville Road to get to the Adams County Historical Society, and we're in the process of soliciting letters of support. The Adams County Historical Society just responded to our one of our board members and said they would draft a letter, and others will as well, and we're trying to get some financial support as well for that. So.
I would hope, yeah. ACTPO.
Yes, ACTPO is working to update their bylaws. I have volunteered to serve on that updating committee. They announced Fairfield Road will be under construction shortly, in a few weeks, and it'll be down to 1 lane. So if you drive Fairfield Road, be aware, leave yourself a little more time. The Federal Highway Administration is coming up with some webinars in the month of May, and one of them on May 24th, which I've signed up for, is on BAM, which stands for Bridge Asset Management. And since we've just tonight passed a bridge-related vote, then that might be something others would like. If you'd like to log in, let me know and I'll sign you up.
overdose awareness. Mr. Moon?
Sure, the task force meets next Tuesday. Last month in April, we did do one of our 2 annual medicine take-back events right across the street at the Housing Authority. We had 8 locations throughout the county. This is a partnership between the DEA, local law enforcement, and the task force. For the county, we took in 1,600 pounds of medications and about 4 pounds of shampoo from one guy. And countywide, we gave out 91 Narcan kits. And for those of you who have been eagerly waiting to hear, yes, Gettysburg did win that contest. We handed out 36 of those 91 Narcan kits. And we took in about 240 pounds of medication here in the borough and 3 pounds of shampoo. Narcan is currently free. You can get it through the overdose task force. It is recommended for every first aid kit in the county, especially those of us who work in the public sector, places of public assembly, hotels, restaurants. If you would like Narcan for your first aid kits, please reach out to me. I can get it for you and give you the 3 minutes of training you need to give your staff. You could save somebody's life, and it will cost you nothing. Thank you.
Okay. Trail feasibility? Nothing. Recycling. Ms. Butterfield.
Yes, on May 19th, we're holding our next paper shredding event. As of this afternoon, we had 90 people signed up. I spoke to Robbie as we came into the building that we need to have another meeting discussing how many people we have signed up. One lady's bringing 23 boxes, and so she needs a line all her own rather than being behind others. May 19th, still can sign up through the website or by contacting me.
Okay. Other elected officials' comments? Anyone with comments this evening?
I'll make a comment. Since HB 300 was mentioned tonight in public comment, if you're not aware, HB 300 is also known as the Fairness Act. While it did pass the House, it still has the Senate to go. I would encourage everyone to consider reaching out to your representatives in Senate and talk to them about what you feel the Fairness Act is. And the non-discrimination ordinance that was passed here in Gettysburg is because we don't have a state law that protects everyone in specific or discrimination with housing, employment, public accommodations in regards to discrimination of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. I also say this because there is an exhibit right now at Gettysburg Community Theater, The Long Road to LGBTQ plus Equality in Pennsylvania. It's a traveling history exhibit that chronicles the efforts that activists have undertaken in Pennsylvania to achieve full equality for LGBTQ plus people, not special rights, equal rights. With a lack of success in passing statewide legislative protections from discrimination in housing, employment, public accommodations, and education, activists have been working for more than 5 decades to obtain these protections, one battle at a time, one municipality at a time. As you know, Borough of Gettysburg is one of those municipalities in the Commonwealth, and hopefully one day we actually will have equality for all. If you would like to see this exhibit, it is on display in the lobby of Gettysburg Community Theater, located at 49 York Street, within the first block of Lincoln Square. It is on display this weekend, as well as next weekend, during their production of Angels in America, the Pulitzer Prize-winning and Tony Award-winning play. If you can't make it to the weekend, please contact me for a special tour. Thank you.
Other elected officials' remarks?
Yes, I do. At home in Adams County, met again, focusing on public transportation and how important that is for affordable housing. I have some transportation brochures for you all. Help yourself. The Forever Love Rescue sent out a mailing today. I received that they are running over with kittens, and kittens are expensive. So they appreciate the money that the borough shares with them, but if any of the public would like to donate to Kitten City with Forever Love Rescue, they would welcome those donations. They also take in-kind donations of kitty litter and kitty food. And finally, I know everybody likes to hear that word in the report. Last meeting, it was discussed about having a household hazard waste turn-in event. To follow through on that, I contacted the county who used to run those events. They're not going to do it anymore, and are hoping the municipalities will pick it up. I contacted DEP, Department of Environmental Protection in Harrisburg, and they put me in contact with a Mr. Mark Moran, who's the household waste expert. He sent me some good information on how to set one up, and then he put me in touch with the vice president of the company that services our region. That would be a company called MXI. He informed me that there are grants available for half of the price. Here are some prices. Our trouble would be, we'd have to decide, do we want to charge by the vehicle or by the pound? And as you'll see from these price sheets, MXI wants to do it by the pound. There are not many times that I leave Charles Gable speechless, but when I shared with him that their estimate of an event that we staged with 100 participants would run $15,000 to $20,000. That and the fact that we don't have a professional scale out there that we could weigh the things. Volunteers can only be in charge of traffic. They cannot handle the materials unless they want to be trained by MXI for a fee, and then they could handle them if they chose. The application to run an event like that is 8 pages long and very complicated. Someone other than I would have to be in charge of filling out the application. It doesn't seem like it is an easy thing to accomplish, but if this group decides you would like to go forward on it, I stand ready to help. And that's all my comment.
That's really a shame, because there are people that contact me all the time. How do I get rid of this household stuff? A lot of it, they don't even know what it is. And whether we like it or not, it's being hidden in trash bags and going to the garbage truck a little bit at a time, but that's where it's ended up. I know I'm the one that started this conversation, but something's got to be done somewhere. I was expecting prices. I wasn't expecting quite that high. I don't know if, I think it's something we really have to look into, and maybe we can go with some other municipalities local to us, and it's going to be a big undertaking, and I fear that a lady with 23 boxes of shredding will be nothing compared to what could show up for this.
Yep.
I know in 3 properties I take care of, there's at least 2 boxes in every garage that have been there for years by my parents, my wife's parents, and I don't know what some of the stuff is. And there's a point where you just get tired of it, but there's no way to get rid of it. There's no place to call. I don't know.
Someone told me today that as far as pesticides go, that I should contact the Department of Agriculture, and I will do that tomorrow morning and see what they say about the very questions you've just asked.
Well, I think with the pesticides, knowing my father-in-law, we did try that. But here again, you have to know what it is. And in our case, we're not exactly sure what it is. We just know it's there. I'm sure there's, between my years in the fire department and with the highway department, I've been in many garages in this town. There are a lot of boxes of stuff that aren't labeled, and you ask people what it is, and they're like, oh, I don't know, it's been there for years. So if we don't want it in the landfills, we gotta do something.
Yeah, and I think this would need to be a regional effort, and it's really a shame that the county let this go, because that's the logical place for it.
It is, you're right.
I mean, everyone needs to do it. It doesn't matter if you're in a dense urban setting or a rural setting. You know, people are going to put it in the trash bags. They're going to, God forbid, pour it into the woods. All the things that you don't want to have happen. If they don't know what to do with it, or it'll sit there. I mean, I can remember times we've been in basements where you see canisters of things floating, and like, that's not good. And there's a reason where we wear dry suits, and that's why.
Right.
Because you don't know what's flooding it or what's floating in the floodwaters, and usually it's not friendly.
I imagine a lot of it's probably very flammable as well. Would you agree with that statement, Wes?
Well, or worse, like looking at a lot of these things, as I listen to Judy talk about, like, you know, the prospect of training people to handle some of these things. A lot of things on that list, you know, some of them seem like, oh yeah, okay, find a fluorescent bulb. Okay, that's not a big deal until it breaks. And if you've never done that and broken one, and then you start to read, like, okay, what's the circumstance here? Okay, there's mercury. Right, there's very specific criteria how you have to handle that. Then yeah, seeing things like oxidizers and so forth on the list, I'm just like, yeah, this is why I'm not a hazmat technician. We use the old thumb rule. The chief would probably tell you, right? You put the thumb over the hazmat, and if you can put your thumb over it, you're far enough away. That's kind of how you. Well, we look to see if there's a police officer that's gotten too close.
Yeah.
Usually, you guys get there before we do. Yeah.
You bring about fluorescent tubes. If you set fluorescent tubes out at the curb, garbage company will leave them.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get rid of them in the garbage anymore.
Yeah, and it used to be they were more common. I know that, you know, like when you buy oil, you can get rid of oil. It used to be more common that like some of the larger hardware stores, you could get rid of tubes and so forth, but that's not always the case anymore.
I'm told that Lowe's will take fluorescent tubes, but you have to know what they are.
Yeah.
So if they sell it, they'll take one back, but.
Yeah, that's usually the kind of arrangement you see, is someone selling the product will take it, but yeah, you have to know what it is. Okay, Mr. Moon?
Oh, I just want to remind all the registered Democrats and Republicans, a week from tomorrow is primary day. Get out there and vote. We have a pretty meager showing for most primaries, somewhere around 16%. So please get out and vote a week from tomorrow.
Comments? Any other comments? Ms. Lawson?
I just want to mention, I was going to mention the primary too, so I'm glad Mr. Moon did, but also the farmer's market was mentioned earlier, and I was a little dubious about the moving from the center of town, but I've been there for the first 2 weeks, and I want to give a shout out to Reza, who's the market manager, and Kathy Glon. It's excellent. I mean, it's very much like a festival kind of atmosphere, musicians in the green area, kids running around, families. There are people I'd never seen before that were there. Lots of great parking, and also it's walkable. Even though it's not in the heart of our downtown, our borough from one end to the other is only a mile long. And so it's really 2 blocks off of Washington Street. People can get there by either bicycle or walking. It's very doable to do that. It's not, you know, out in East Berlin or something like that. So I encourage people to go. It was great. So
Nothing's wrong with these.
nothing's wrong with East Berlin. I just
So, like, I saw Chad pressed up over there, like,
right. I'm just saying.
Oh, East Berlin.
People, you know, think about like walking or riding their bike, that it's like so far away that it's not in the heart of the downtown. And really, it's just really a couple blocks up Washington Street, and then, you know, 2 blocks over. It's not far.
and we love our quaint colonial borough, East Berlin, here in Adams County also.
Yep. Right.
All right, be reassured.
Anyway, thank you.
All right, thank you. That takes us to our second public comment session. This is open to any item of your choosing. And ask again, use the podium, name, address, and limit yourself to 5 minutes. Public comment.
I have two items, I guess you'd call it. One, with the Elm Street situation, there was a plan, there was a program, and then there was an ordinance. And sort of the good, really useful aspect of Elm Street was the program. It helped properties get fixed and showcase history and improve the streetscape, and that program died. It doesn't exist anymore. And it would be possible to resurrect it with some support from the borough. After one of the at-home meetings about a year ago where it was mentioned, I talked to Robin Fitzpatrick, and she said she'd be willing to try to get something going again with approval from the borough. So that's something to keep in mind, because that was really, I know people that use that money to improve their properties. And also a plug for the Planning Commission meetings. Ms. Marshall is presenting educational and background material in concert with the rezoning process. And this past meeting was about equity in zoning and special exceptions, variances, and et cetera, which was very pertinent to the current situation. Ms. Lawson attended that one. And I would encourage council to either attend those meetings or somehow get this information as you go through the rezoning process. I think it would be great background material when you finally come to decision-making, you know, some of the reasoning behind it. So that's my plug for the Planning Commission and for Ms. Marshall.
Can you just give your name and address again, Sue, because you didn't at the beginning of this?
Pardon me?
You gave your name and address at the first session, but
Right.
not at this one.
314 North Stratton.
All right, Sue Sibley, thank you. Public comment. Oh, now's the time. Yep.
Hi, everybody. My name's Ann Roden. I've been living in Gettysburg for 15 years. I am happily over at 114 East Middle Street. I'm here tonight to introduce myself and let you know a little thing that we've been up to. We have a small committee, Gettysburg Area Skate Park Committee. We want to rebuild the skate park. So we're asking to be considered to be on the agenda and part of the budget. We've already spoken with Erin Pettigrew at GARA. She's been on board with everything. She's looking into some grants. We're also happy to do some fundraising on our own and promote it. We've spoken to Reza with the farmers market, and we're hoping to partner with them in some way as well. Just to get some awareness and to promote. The main thing that we're looking to do is have it all done in concrete. The way that it is now, it's been paved over in asphalt. It's no longer safe to use. It's been almost 20 years, so we're just hoping to kind of give it a fresh look, fresh safety, and, you know, promote the rec park and promote skateboarding. So thanks for your time.
Okay. Yeah, I would note, and we can talk about that a bit at budget time.
Great.
The major venue for you is going to be the Recreation Authority.
Yeah.
We lease it to them, and they really oversee everything else.
No problem. Thank you,
Yeah.
guys.
Sir?
My name's Derek Roden, 114 East Middle Street. I'm Ann's husband. I just wanted to reiterate what she said and hope for the consideration, and also just comment on the stuff for the waste. The house we bought, we inherited some of that stuff as well. So I would agree with you guys. There's probably a lot of other people buying houses inheriting that stuff, and we should probably do something about it. Ours is just labeled poison. Yeah. So I don't know what kind of poison it is. So thank you.
Simply labeled poison. Yikes. Wow. Public comment. Yes. Stolen crossbones and everything.
Didn't say what kind of poison, just had a poison label.
Hi, I'm Shelley Nouse. I'm at 28 Chambersburg Street. I'm a resident there, and I also operate my business, Fresh Boutique, out of there. Back on April 11th, I'm just kind of going to go over what happened. It's an ongoing process. The meters were bagged. and I found out later on that night that there was night construction, which went on for a week. Columbia Gas was cutting up the street to place a gas line for Union Hotel across the street. I have since then, they came and patch paved it after a week of steel plates. The patch pave failed to the point cars were bottoming out. I know the police were there. I know the borough got multiple calls. I called Robbie. Of course, last week we had rain. The patch on the other side of the street, on the Gettysburg side of the street, is now failing. It has about a 4-inch divot. Again, I called Robbie Friday. I've called Columbia Gas 4 times and lodged complaints. Today, I called Charles Gable, who then I called, went to the Dan Mal's office, and through them, they made a call to Columbia Gas, and I got a reply within an hour. So I'm just wanting to share this information that I got today. Apparently, they're having a meeting tomorrow to decide when that's going to be paved. They're supposed to be sending out Precision tomorrow to patch the opposite side of the street, so I don't even know if anybody's aware of that, because it's going to be during the daytime and the traffic's going to be shut down. So I know it was a big surprise when they came up the last time. And Columbia Gas is supposed to call me back tomorrow to give me the date of when it's supposed to permanently happen. PennDOT, I guess they didn't get a reply from them yet. It was supposed to be finished last week, but PennDOT hasn't replied to them. I'm also asking your assistance to speed the process up so it doesn't become a nuisance all summer. All the residents on Chambersburg Street, and I've been in touch with many of them, nobody's sleeping at night because when the trucks hit that around 3 a.m., it just shakes and rattles the buildings, which has been the reason I've been complaining to Columbia Gas, because when I purchased the building 5 years ago, I had to dig up my sidewalk and replace my crushed sewer pipe. And now that line is right over all that work that I had done, because we were able to take the plastic pipe and shove it through the terracotta pipe into the sewer main. So I'm really concerned. I didn't realize there's concrete underneath the asphalt, and I highly doubt that they're going to replace at concrete, which was old Route 30, I guess, or 30 when it was concrete. And I'm really concerned that that's going to continue to sink, because it's been sinking just with the patch. So I'm just asking for any assistance and just to kind of keep you in the loop. When I called Columbia Gas today and said, nobody came out and put any sort of notification on our doors as to night construction from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., which was jackhammers and lights and generators, they told me it was the borough's responsibility. So I just want you to know that this is the back and forth that I'm hearing. So that's all.
Yeah, this is on Chambersburg Street, correct?
Chambersburg Street.
Yeah, so one of the difficulties here, and perhaps Robbie or Chad could speak to this some more, but right, that's a state highway, so it becomes very difficult. The borough is responsible for everything that's underneath the paved surface, but we get very little say in the paved surface itself.
Columbia Gas had to achieve an HOP from PennDOT to do that work, not
That's
from
what
the borough.
do we even issue a highway accuracy permit for that?
State
No,
Street.
PennDOT does.
Just for the sidewalk, the right-of-way sidewalks.
So yeah, that's what I mean. Even when we do projects on state routes, it can be very difficult for us sometimes because it goes through PennDOT.
Right.
And they issue the permit. So normally, if it were on a borough street, we would be out there holding the contractor accountable to the occupancy permit, but we don't really have the ability to do that because it's a state highway. But much as you allude to, right, like things underneath then are within our purview, and that we have stormwater issues right in that neighborhood that are a known problem.
There's an actual inlet right there that they're going to be paving up against. And I'm concerned for the future of my building, because if that starts to fail, it's going to create, and it's a Civil War building.
Yeah.
And I don't know even what recourse I have other than to come to the council. And of course, I'm going to be out there tomorrow when they're there, but this is getting involved. I don't know if anybody has some direct line to PennDOT and a way to make sure that things are done in an appropriate as manner as possible.
I can tell you that I do not. The District 8 manager is generally who you want to speak to, and I can tell you the last time it was an acting manager that I dealt with, but the last time I dealt with them, I was not satisfied. And it dealt with a lot of road closures we had during a storm and their response to that. So I don't have any magic.
Still an
Yeah.
acting manager, we don't have a permanent manager.
Still acting, yeah. So I hate to tell you that we're not in a much better position than you are, except that we can advocate. I think that most of the time, your representatives like Mr. Mao they tend to get a little bit more attention in this type of circumstance, and if you keep having them, maybe that'll be effective for you, because it does sound totally unacceptable. You know, and we have literally masonry arch chambers right in that area that we're concerned about and we're looking at here in the next few years.
Well, I know the manhole right in front of, like, within 5 feet of that Robbie came out last year and fixed it as best as he could, because that in itself was creating that same sort of vibration and disturbance, so.
Keep in mind, that's Gettysburg Municipal Authority, that's not Borough.
That is.
The sanitary sewer manhole, that's Gettysburg Municipal Authority. They came out and did that.
Yes, that's what, yeah, you guys did, okay.
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
I know you don't want to make a lot of phone calls, but on all the dump trucks on PennDOT, that 1-800 fixed road number, that generates a computer report. So the more of those it generates,
Fixed road, okay.
the more you may get some attention. I know a guy who called that 27 times in one day, and he got some attention.
Are you that guy?
No, I was not. I may have been the guy that planted the seed, but
Sorry,
I
I
was
just
not
thought
the
I'd
guy
ask.
that down my number.
I know a guy. Any other public comment this evening? Yes.
Scott English, business owner, 6668 West High Street, and I'd like to echo what Ms. Sipperly had to say, and I'd like to volunteer the Academy as a place to meet if you'd like to gather folks for the rejuvenation of the Elm Street program.
Public comment? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned.